Welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision making to try to figure out what keeps us stuck and how do we get unstuck. I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator turned coach, author, and entrepreneur. With me today is Faust Ruggiero, and Faust is a psychologist who has been in private practice for over 35 years. Before entering private practice, he worked in clinics for deaf children, prisons, nursing homes, substance abuse centers, inpatient facilities, and is a consultant for major national and international corporations. He's a published author and a professional or published research author and a professional clinical trainer. He also created the Fix Yourself Empowerment series, which is a series of handbooks he started developing in 2016 based on the Process Life program. This series of handbooks helps readers address difficult situations in their lives. It currently includes the Fix Yourself Handbook, the Fix Yourself Anxiety Handbook, the Fix Your Depression Handbook, and the Fix Your Anger Handbook, and the new Fix Your Addiction Handbook that was recently released. Faust, welcome to the show.
Karen, thanks so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be spending time with you today.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you, and I want to just dive right in and talk about the Fix Yourself series of books. What are they about, and what motivated you to get into that line of book writing?
I've been doing this for a long, long time. When you counsel for as long as I have, you weed out some things don't work. You create things that do work. And I wanted a program that people could follow. I'm really a stickler for not just information. That's great. I don't think you get power from information. You get power from learning how to put your information into action. So everything I do when I counsel is action based. Here's your information. Now let's do these things. I wrote the books the same way, short chapters. So you can read a chapter in 7 or 8 pages. And then we go to now do these action steps. I wanted that when I did a literature review of all the self-help books, tons and tons of great information, very few people saying, do this. And I don't care what you're doing in your life. If you're doing something, there's the information, then there's what you have to do with it. So that's the motivation behind all of this. Let's give people solid action steps that are measurable and they can see the progress.
That makes so much sense. But I'm curious because I can tell with some of the books, Fix Your Anger, Fix Your Depression, Fix Your Addiction. Those kind of, they identify a specific issue that someone might be struggling with and say, okay, if I've got this, I read this book and that will help me get through it. But what about the Fix Yourself? What about the general premise and book? Who is that for and what does it help people do?
It's a great question. When I started putting this together, you've published, so the publishers say who's your target audience and all that garbage that they ask you. And I said target audience. They said, oh yeah, self-help, probably women 18 to like 40. And I said, oh, so that's the only people that I wanted to write a book for everyone. That answers the first question. Who's it for? Everyone. I wanted anyone to pick it up and say, okay, I can use this. And I write in that fashion. I don't just write for a demographic. I look for something that is much more widespread. The other thing I wanted to do was to be able to put something out there that when people read it, they could apply it. So, you know, get it spread to the entire population. And I have people that start this at 16, and I have a woman just emailed me and said she's 81. Oh my God, this is doing things. The first book is designed, it's the flagship book that has 36 chapters, 36 different problems.
Whoa.
That's what we're building the series on. So the next book, anxiety was in the first book, depression was there, anger was there, addiction was there. The one I'm just finishing now, which should come out in June, is on internal language and how we speak to ourselves and how we either tear ourselves down or empower ourselves. That's coming out. We're going to do some things on faith and on relationships, and so all of this comes out of the first book. That's the foundational book, and if you think about it, when we make changes in our lives, the first thing we do is put down a foundation that's going to hold the change. So that's the first book. There's the foundational book. If you read that, you get an idea what we're doing. And every book is written with exactly the same design. Short chapters, information, action steps. So we don't deviate from that. So you read the next book, you say, "Oh, this is easy. This is what I did the first time."
Okay, so it sounds like if someone was struggling with some sort of an issue, some sort of psychological issue or relationship issue or life issue, whatever, that the place that they would want to start is with your flagship first book, get an idea about what the system is all about, and then go from there. Hopefully, whatever their problem is, you've already written that book for the next one. But then they go to that and then they go from there. Is that a
It's
fair?
exactly what we've done. What I'm looking at is simulating counseling. If anyone's been in counseling, you get in, you put a foundation down, you get all the information about the person. Then, if we're doing our job, we say, okay, we're going to deal with this in this session. Now, I gave you a lot of information in this hour. Go do these two or three things. We'll check back next week. Any good therapist is doing that. So the person says, okay, I know what I'm working on. This is what I'm supposed to do. Just this. This is how we're going to go back. This is what I have to come back with. And hopefully I've done it. And we're going to work on it and tweak it where we need. That's all I'm doing.
That that makes so much sense, and it sounds like it mirrors a lot of. I mean, I'm not a therapist, but I work as a coach, and it's very similar to my process. It's like I tell people education, information, they're all very important. You can't make good decisions without starting there. But if you don't know what to do with that information, to your point, if you don't know how to apply it and how to actually take action based on that, it's not particularly useful.
It's not. And what happens if that's the way we continue to run things, then our minds they normalize that approach. Oh, I get information now. Good. I know what to do. And we do nothing. But and that's kind of the thing I have to break with people when they come into counseling. I'm giving you information. Great. Now they're saying, oh, that's great. Good. I'm wonderful. I feel better. I said, well, no, you shouldn't, because the next step is you have to do these things. And they say, oh, I have to go. I got to work now. It's not, the information doesn't just come in and change my brain. That's the starting block. That says, let's not do this. Let's do this, but you have to do this. So
But how do you get them to do that? Because doing something that's scary, that takes people out of their comfort zone. I mean, you and I both know that's where the real progress is made, but how do you get people over that hurdle, that analysis paralysis?
it's the old transference thing. I start by believing in me. I'm the expert. I remember when I wrote the first book, my editor comes back and says, "Who's this we and all that? You have to be the guide. I say you should do this. I'm writing it because of this." When I come into counseling, I'm doing a number of things. First, I'm establishing a rapport so they want to come back. I'm letting them know that I got the answers. I got you. Follow me. And then I'm telling them, okay, these things are there. Don't be daunted by that because you have the power. I'm going to pull these little PowerPoints out for you. And every time I ask you to do a change, I'm also going to connect you with what you have inside you to get there. We're going to keep building that. So not only does the program advance, your ability to deal with all these little intricate things that we're introducing, that changes too. So they'll come in and say, okay, I'm not sure about this. Oh, you've told me this. Now I can do that. And next week when I come back, he's going to do the same thing. We have to do this, and here's the power. Then they get to a threshold point where they say, I am powerful enough to make all these changes. And then they love it. It's like working out. I'm jogging for 5 minutes. I'm going to die here. Now I'm jogging for an hour, and I want to go faster and increase the difficulty. Give me more, give me more. The mind is expansive. It wants more. We just have to guide it into the right track. That's all.
And is that what you do? Because I've heard you mention, even in this short time, the words power and empowerment
Hmm.
multiple times already. And I know that's a big piece of what you do. How how do you empower people, and how can somebody who's reading your book and might not have access to you individually, but is reading your book, how can they empower themselves?
The two-step process, whether it's counseling, whether it's empowering yourself, whatever you do, the first step I always call it the purge. That's where we go in and we say, oh, you've got this that you're doing that's pulling you back. You have this. These are all the things that pull your power, either pull it away from you or compromise it. So it could be, what you do physically, sleep, and what you put in your body and all those kind and exercise. It could be your relationships. It could be anything that's toxic that comes into your life and grabs your energy. So let's identify those and start moving those out of the picture. Now we're going to identify all the sources of your power, because now we have a whole lot of energy that you're not throwing away over here. And that's, and when you think, people come in and say, I'm exhausted. And I say, what did you do today? And they give me a pretty basic day. I said, how did you get tired doing that? Well, I said, let's talk about what you're thinking about and what's pulling at you. And then I get like 80% of their day is over here. It's all about energy management. Power comes from energy management. I always tell them it's like a light bulb, when you have the dimmer switch. When you're using all your energy on stuff that's toxic and working against you, you get about, 20 watts or 30 watts. When we clear all that out, it's like turning that dial, and all of a sudden the room is illuminated. We're giving you more power.
But I want to dive into this idea of the purge, right? Because I think, a lot of my audience, they're people who are in relationships that aren't working, or they're in the middle of a divorce. And so when I, as someone who works in the divorce space, hear you talk about purge and relationships in the same sentence, that to me is like, oh, that toxic marriage that you've got, you need to purge that. Well, you and I both know that's not something you just flip a switch and you've done. So how should people approach the purge?
I'm glad you asked it that way, because that's the way people think about it. Oh, my marriage is bad. I got to get rid of this person. Now, what we have to do is not only decide that that's toxic energy, now we have to define it. How is it affecting you? Sometimes and most of the time, the toxic energy is a two-way street. You both may be contributing, or your spouse or significant other is the toxic person, but you're allowing it. You're victimizing yourself, and it's like you're a magnet to it. So we have to define where that comes from. A lot of times I get that toxic relationship, and I can bring them through it and have a warm, loving relationship. Other times we define it and say, look, this is not going anywhere. It's a love-hate relationship. It's one that's feeding off the toxin. You're at a point where maybe you need to make some changes. But before we get there, it's not just toxin, it's defining it. What is the toxin? Where is it coming from? How's it being utilized? Is there a possibility of removing that, and what we have left is something we can build on? So I don't just say it's toxic, get rid of it. Let's define, and that's what we should do in anything. The information is there. The information is my relationship is toxic. I'm tired. I'm unhappy. I'm getting sick over this. Okay, give me all the symptoms. Let's define what it is. Because a lot of times, you know how it goes. It's finances, and I can't leave. I have 2 or 3 kids, and they're going to get destroyed by this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a business we're running together, whatever it may be. So before we throw you into, a horrible state, let's define what the information's all about. Let's define your options. Let's look at those and see which ones work. And I think that's what makes my program different. I know so many counselors that come in and they say, well, it's a toxic relationship. You've got to change this. And I say, how did you get from toxic to change? What information did you use to get to that point?
What kind of information is someone looking for in order to make that definition?
I start by what's happening and how are you responding to it? How are you internalizing it? A toxic person, I can be the person that says, you don't do anything right. And, I'm putting it all on you. And then I'm saying, okay, well, let's look at what you are doing. Let's look at whether or not, you're accepting this and you're being victimized. Let's look at where you came from. If it's a woman, was dad a mean, rotten person and mom was the church mouse that cowered? And what are you doing? Are you following suit? What would happen if mom would have done things a little bit differently? Might you have learned a few things differently? We got to a point where we say, oh, it doesn't work, I'll leave. So we train our kids to say, when something's difficult, get out. And you know where they're going next? To the next horrible relationship because they didn't change anything. So even if we have to change it, before we get there, I want them to learn all about it. So the process of change has positive energy associated with it.
That's interesting. Why does it matter? I mean, isn't change change? Why does it matter if you bring positive energy to your change or not?
Because if you don't, you go back to the same things you did before, which is what you know. And the mind, I talk about pro, uh, processes I call habit formation or normalization. Our brain accepts those, and a toxic relationship often becomes a comfort zone because we know it. It feels horrible, but our minds know how to deal with it. It becomes familiar. I know what I have to do every day, and I get through it. Now I'm okay. I go to a counselor and they say, this isn't working. Look at this. And you say, I got to get out. But no one ever told me to do it differently. So my energy is going to be the same when I go out there. I'm going to reestablish something. I'm going to make some changes. It's going to look like it's different. Oh, they treat me nicer. Oh, but you know what? I didn't change me and say I'm worthy of something different, and this is exactly what I want to get there. So now I go and I pick the same model with a few different features. 2 years down the road, I'm saying, I don't believe this. It may not be the same things, but now they're doing these other things that I don't like. I don't, it's great to change the venue, but I have to change me. So I become, I always call it your own gatekeeper, your loving gatekeeper. You decide who gets in, what gets in, and who stays out. But you have to have the information. You have to know what it is that's guiding your choices there.
Okay, so let me pick a little bit at this because this is an intriguing concept, and I want to know if somebody is in a relationship, a marriage relationship, doesn't matter, um, and they've defined it as being toxic, that it makes them feel bad, they're getting sick, it's all the things, right? Is it better, or can you say whether it's better or worse, for them to start to make the internal changes and examine the relationship and the behaviors while they're still in it? Or should they get out and do the work, excuse me, after the fact, or does it matter?
Well, it matters. I have defining points for me, which are you in physical danger?
Right.
That's key. If that's going to happen, is the person addicted to a drug and then comes home? Maybe it's not going to beat you up, but they rip you apart when they come home. Is the person a gambler and you're now $20,000 in debt and people are calling and knocking at the door? There are reasons to get out. If there's none of that, and at least we're going to look at whether you're going to stay, because now I want to look at the person too. Sometimes there's a toxic situation and the person I'm involved with has some mental health things going on. Maybe there's tons of anxiety. There may be a bipolar issue on their part. Now I've got to look at all those things. So what I'm saying is every case is individual. And that's where people get stuck. Well, I probably should. It's toxic. I should go. Let's just slow the train down a bit. If you're not in danger, let's look at this. And even if you're going to leave, we still want an exit plan. We still want you to grab onto everything. Again, you're an attorney. You know how many times a person comes in and says, okay, it's toxic, I'm getting out. And the attorney says, okay, great, and we get you out. And they look, and now they're in this two-bedroom apartment where, the landlord's horrible. And now they have a whole new set. There's different problems. We
Right.
want to define everything, make some intelligent decisions. If you're leaving, there's a quality exit plan so you don't leave and take on more and more toxins.
Right. That makes so much sense, and you're also 100% right. I mean, people's initial reaction is this hurts, I'm leaving it because I don't want to hurt and I don't want to feel bad. And that makes a world of sense, but the minute you leave or you say the word divorce, everything changes and your access to information can also change with it. And things that you could have easily gotten yesterday are now missing. And you just bought yourself an incredibly difficult journey, and it didn't have to be that way.
Exactly. So it all boils down to being willing to love and treat people like individuals. If you walk into my office, I'm going to love you. I'm going to say you're special to me. I want to make sure everything is just the way it's supposed to be. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Your willingness to accept that, to grab it and run with it is that's up to you. I will tell you that every step you take along that journey, I'll be right there with you. But you have to make the decision to do the work. Whether you stay or leave, you are going to have a ton of work in front of you. It's just the way it is. If you decide to leave and create a new life, there's a lot of work, unless you've done some silly things like, well, I left Bob to go in with Gary over here, but Gary's got a whole lot of problems. Hey, but you know what? They're not as bad as Bob. Oh, wonderful. We know where that's going.
Yeah,
So and people do that. I mean, it sounds like a joke, but people jump and they
100%.
before they leave, they intellectualize it and they make it sound like it looks good and so much better. And they're initially right. They're not doing what Bob did, but Gary's got his own stuff. And you didn't work on that. You didn't look at that and say, where's this going to go?
Yeah.
So, we want to make it individual and we want to make sure we cover all the bases.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. That's why, when people ask me, "Oh, I'm still in the middle of my divorce, should I be dating?" Again, obviously the answer is individual, right? If your divorce has been going on for 6 years, which some of them do, okay, that's one thing. But you just filed 2 months ago and it isn't over yet. Of course, it's not over yet. And jumping, from one person to the next and starting dating too soon, you're going from the frying pan to the fire.
Agreed.
So, what would you encourage or counsel or, tell people to do to make sure that they are ready, that they have done their own or enough of their own work? Because I think we're all works in progress. How can somebody know if they've done enough work to be ready to move on?
I ask questions. They're not going to take it from me, even though I'm their counselor. If I say, you're not ready yet, the heart pulls, the physical stuff, it's all. So what I always say is, okay, you're saying you want to move forward. Yeah, I think I found this person. Good. Tell me why you're ready. Tell me what work you've done to get to the next point and be specific. And they look at me then. Well, no, I just feel much better. I'm working on things. I said, you didn't tell me a darn thing. And if you didn't tell me that, you don't know it yourself. If you're going to move on to the next place, you need to be ready for it. You need to know what wasn't good about you in the relationship, not about the person you're leaving. That's gone. Let's talk about you. What makes you feel as though you can step into the next relationship and be productive there? That you're going to see things coming way before they become toxic, that you're going to be able to be that loving person who knows how to set boundaries and say, I'm doing this, but you need to be doing this, and I need to look at that and make sure it's happening. So we don't do all those things again. I need you to tell me that. And that's where, you know what they say?
Hmm.
I'm not sure. I said, what you looked for when you came in was for me to give you the pat on the back and say, stamp of approval, go do it. And I'm not doing it. That's not my job. That's your job. You need to know when you get there. It all changes because I'm putting them in a position to take responsibility of their own lives and not to have a quick fix. We
Okay.
want you to be happy for the long haul.
All right. So you have just touched on a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is personal responsibility. What does that mean to you?
For me, it's about accountability. It's about defining what I need to do. It's about being able to say yes, not I'm working on it. No, this is going to happen, and I am willing to do the work to get there. That may not mean that I get happy today with my new thing, because that's just a toy, is all it is. It means that I'm going to go through an uncomfortable process of change to get to a point where I be comfortable with my life and inside my head and heart. And then I might be able to turn it outward. But I'm going to accept responsibility for my life. I am going to say, I'm going to stop saying I was unhappy because that thing out there. I'm going to be master of my destiny. That out there is not going to have the power to make me happy or not. I'm doing it. And if that doesn't want to cooperate, then I'll make choices. It's all about me and me getting strong, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do.
What if someone's not willing to do whatever they have to do? What if it's too hard?
I ask them, how much unhappiness are you willing to take on again? Said, if you don't want to do the work, let's look at it. If you do 10%, you get this, 20 and so forth. If you get to how much are you willing to adjust to? Are you willing to get up every day and say, I guess this is okay? You want to keep on making some excuses? Do you want to look at the other person and say, wow, they're really happy. Why can't I do that? You're going to do the work. Those of us that are happy, truly happy, we got blown up and we turned to ashes and we rebuilt. That's how we got that. They'll come in and say to me, "Well, you have all the answers. It's easy for you." I said, "You think somehow I just popped out and this is the way I was?" No, I got beat up like the rest of the world, and I made a decision somewhere along the line to say, enough. I am fixing this. I'm going to be my master of my destiny. I'm going to get up every day and be in control of my world, how I think and feel in it. Do you want to do that? Then your confidence goes up. Your faith in yourself goes up. When the pandemic hit, people said, "Oh my God, what are you going to do?" And I said, "Nothing." "What do you mean, nothing?" "I'm going to wait it out. I'm going to do what we need to do. I'm going to avoid contact, those kinds of things. If I have to stay in the house, I will." "You'll go crazy." I said, "No, I won't." In my own space? No, I won't. I I empowered myself long before that. When the time comes, I empower myself to take on anything that comes on in my life. That's the goal.
Okay, so how do you empower yourself? Because there are a lot of people out there who are watching and listening who won't have the benefit of having Faust sitting there counseling them, right? Maybe they'll buy your book. Hopefully they'll buy your book. I suggest that they do, and they can do the exercises in there, but it's still them doing it for them. How can they do it themselves? What do they need to do? Can you give them any tips?
Your first step, your first thing is always the decision. I am going to change this and nothing is going to stop me. Now, you've tried to do this yourself all this time. It didn't work. Now you're going to get help. Who am I going to trust? Whether, my people will always say, "So glad I came here. I finally made a decision." And of course they're going to say, "You're so wonderful." And that's all, that's sideline stuff. You made the decision. You are the one that said, "I'm leaving this office or this session and I'm going out and doing those things." I'm not making any excuses anymore. I'm not excusing myself from responsibility. I'm not saying the problem came from outside of me. I am going to take everything and I'm going to take responsibility for it for me. If you're willing to do that, everything's going. How could it not change? It's the antithesis of what you did before. That's what you did all the wrong things. Now you make the right decisions. Will it take time? Yes, because we're retraining your brain to think differently and take those old things and say, no, they weren't normal. You looked at them as part of your norm. They weren't. We're going to put new norms in there. We're going to retrain your brain, and that's going to take a year or two. Big deal.
Okay, let's dig into that because I think when some people hear a year or two, they're like, "Ah, that's just crazy. That's too long." And I hear this thrown around in the self-development, personal development world. It's 21 days or 28 days to change a habit, and I see you shaking your head. No, tell me more about that.
All of that's garbage. Those are people selling programs that convince you because they're playing into the immediate gratification. The way the human brain works is it does not change habits that fast. Those habits, the way the mind works, it works on conscious thought, and then and the more we work with conscious thought, we train the brain, it turns to kind of automatic response. And now the brain just does it because the brain is clearing space for conscious thought. I call it autopilot thinking. So what happens is all the things we learn now go to autopilot. We have to make all this conscious, and that's a training period for your brain. That takes a much longer time, not tremendous. And also, let me say this: it depends on how much time you're putting into it and how much commitment is there. If you're, if I said to you, hey, you're going to go start this new exercise plan and you work out once every 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to take you a long time. If you get into the plan and do it religiously like you're supposed to, your body gets toned, your endurance increases, and you're able to do it better. So it takes a while to retrain your brain. But here's what I tell everyone. Are you telling me the only in your mind what you're worth is 21 days? And then that's all the time you're going to put into it? Or are you worth loving yourself into a great life for the long haul? And are you willing to put that much time in for you?
Yeah,
Think about
I
that
love that.
concept.
I love that. But how do you know when you've arrived?
You don't. It's not about that. That's what, see, that's another thing that we program to it, the destination. I'm going to do this, and when I get there, it will be that. And when you get there, a million things have changed in your life, people, places, things. What you're doing, your goal is to become the person that embraces your life every day, looks at it and says, I need to do this today. It's not overwhelming. They're little things. Here's my schedule. Here are the things I want to accomplish. Here's my downtime. Here's my service time. Whatever it is, every day, my goal was to become a person who loved myself into being the person I want to be. Destination realized. Everything else, lines up behind that. That's what I want to be. I want to be that person. If I'm setting a destination, what happens when I get there? I stop working? Oh, I got there. Now I can relax. That's what we want to do. It's vacation time. No, it's not.
Well, you can't blame someone for wanting a vacation.
No doubt about it. You can't blame someone for saying, I want to get there and be happy. I'm just saying, if you become the person who every day says, I'm making the best of every moment of my life, if that's what you're willing to do, that's what you plug into every day. And everything that comes into your world goes into that power person. In the first book, I talk about what gratitude and humility and wisdom are and how to get there. And, people, for example, gratitude, people will say, I ask them what gratitude is. Oh, it's when I get this, I'm so thankful. I said, no, that's thankful. You're right. Gratitude is a state that lives inside you. And it is a power that no matter what comes into your life, it goes to that little place, and you wrap the gratitude around everything. That's how I live my life. I don't wait. I want that. Oh, I'm so grateful. That no, you got something, work over. It's a state of being where you're grateful for every second of your life. And that doesn't just turn on. That's why the 21-day programs don't work because they don't get you to change all those things. They don't get you to understand the power of surrender and humility. They don't do those things. But that's what works for the long run.
Okay, so if people are living in this state of gratitude, what would you say to the person who is still in that toxic situation, toxic relationship? And how can I be grateful for this? This is the antithesis of everything that I want. I'm miserable. He or she treats me badly. My kids, aren't doing what I want. My job sucks. Like everything sucks. How can I be grateful?
This is me. This is my world out there. When I talk gratitude, I say, let's remove the world for a moment. I need to know the person you are. If you're unhappy with something, you've taken the first step. Your mind has said, this is not for me. Why not? Because it doesn't fit. Well, then let's talk about who's in there. I don't want to hear about this kid and that finance and this abusive person and that job supervisor who's tearing you down in the finances. Those are things and people in your life. They're not here. They're out there. I want to know what's in here. And once they start switching that, and because what they're doing, and we all do it, we look at what's in our lives, all the stuff in our lives,
Right.
and that's how we
Right.
define ourselves. That's external. We're going to go internal. I want to go, so to speak, into the soul of you. I want to get into what's in there. That's where you're going to define it. Because guess what? That's where your PowerPoint is. It's not out there. Changing your external world does not make you more powerful. It just makes you more happy. But now it's dependent upon external things which often are out of your control. I want you to be happy and powerful over what's inside you. So all of that takes a back seat. I don't need any of that to be happy. I'd like it. It would make me happier. But my power rests inside me. It's like the athlete who's been kicked around and dropped from the team and says, no way. And they say, no, you're no good. You're never going to make it. And all of a sudden, we're watching that person on television who is now the most valuable player or whatever it may be. And then they tell their story. How did they get there? Not by changing the people out there, but becoming powerful inside. They made a decision and said, nothing will stop me. I will be powerful inside. And they can't stop me. They don't have the ability.
Interesting. So is that, if I'm catching this correctly, is that the crux of what the entire Fix It series is
Now
about?
you got it. That's the goal. Fix Yourself Empowerment Series. I want to fix what doesn't work. It's about, second word, it's yourself. It's about me. Empowerment. I want to get power inside me. That's the whole thing. And then and the way the first book will tell you, it's all about balance. It's about being able to balance my physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual attributes. That's what makes a person. So when I start working on the power, my emotions don't override my intellect. My thoughts aren't all over the place. Spiritually, I feel connected. My body's where it's supposed to be. I'm doing the right things. That's power. You balance those, and that it's not that you have to focus on that. If you're doing what I'm telling you, those come into play. You say, well, you know what? I'm not going to do all that crazy stuff and put my body through all that. I'm not going to come home at the end of the day and I'm going to have 5 drinks and smoke a few joints, and because it did nothing to empower me. It's an escape.
Yeah,
I'm gonna come home and say, my time. Let me just catch my breath, and it's me. It's what this is. When I walk in the room, you're gonna know I'm in control. Don't try to sell me anything because it's not happening.
that's interesting. And it seems like if that's genuinely the place that you're coming from, that toxic relationship, one way or another, it can't last. Or it can't continue to be toxic. Either
It
you're going to get
dies.
out
It,
or
it
the
moves
dynamic
in.
changes.
Once it gets in there, it just dies. And the other important point is to get your mind out of what's trending and what people are doing, because who's the leader out there? Nobody. Who are you following with all this herd mentality stuff? You go online and you see this one uh, attacking here, and then they got 3,000 likes, and I said, what in the world are people doing? When I look at that stuff, I say, really? Where in the world did you get that idea? Show me the source. Because it can't come in unless it's genuine and it has its own power. That doesn't have anything. I stop following the crowd. I don't care whether they say, oh, you're in step or not. I'm not in step with you. I'm in my step. I'm establishing my step. And I'm walking to that. And I know it's healthy because every day I get up and I can deal with whatever comes into my life. It doesn't mean my life's perfect and it's going to have all those things that other people deal with. And it does. And every day I get up and I said, that may be what I have to deal with, but it's not tearing me down. No way. I won't allow it.
That is amazing. And I think it's what so many people long for, to have that kind of personal power. And I can just say thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of this with us. Do you have any last words, any last thoughts for the audience, something that you want to leave them with?
Yes, as what I alluded to before, you have to love yourself enough to say, I'm worth this. I have a right to be able to be happy, but I have to commit to the work and have to make it about me, not be all this other stuff out there. Be able to say, I'm going to get help. I'm going to do the work, regardless of how hard it feels, because when I get through this period of uncomfortable change, I'm going to be at a point where I'm powerful enough inside that nothing out there is going to tear me down. I'll have hits. People will die. There'll be traumas. I'll have those, but I have the power to deal with that. That's what I want. If you're willing to do that and you're willing to do the work and it's not happening in 21 days and understand that, but it shouldn't. The last thing I say is your life goes on day to day. You may be around for 50 or 60 or whatever more years. Make every one of those days an opportunity to be stronger, happier, and more in control of your world. And that is the answer to how you love yourself. You hear that all the time. You must love yourself. That's the answer to how you do it. If you do that, you'll love yourself.
That that's beautiful. Faust, I can't thank you enough for being here, for sharing your wisdom, for, all of the things that you're doing. If people want to find you or want to buy your books, where can they go to do that?
The best place, Karen, is my website. It's my name, faustruggiero.com. Everything about me and the books are there. Excerpts from the books are there, so you can see what you're getting into if you think you might want to buy them. There's a contact link, and I encourage people, send me an email. If I do respond to people, and if I can help you, then we'll do that.
That's wonderful. And for anyone who's watching or listening, we're going to link to everything, all the books, Faust's website, everything will be linked underneath in the show notes. Thank you again so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. And for those of you who are out there watching or listening, if you enjoyed today's conversation, if you want more just like it, do me a big favor, like, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe wherever you're listening to this. And I look forward to seeing you again next time.